4020.
Warrington 6, Hull Kingston Rovers 8. Here's a tweet from Sid, who says...
Is Sid a Hull KR fan?
He's a Hull KR fan.
Oh, I thought so.
And an Everton fan as well, so... does that cancel each other out? I don't know. Lindop failed to ground the ball in 2025, and Fred Lindop was the ref when Hull KR won it in 1980. Can we have a Lindop involved every year? Sign him.
Nice one.
Has no one picked up on that yet? Surely that must be on some clickbaity website. The amazing coincidence between Hull KR's wins in 1980 and 2025. Now I've got to let my face come back from that face I was pulling. What a final. What an intriguing final. The best team may have lost, but drama and everything.
The best team over the full 80 minutes, but not when it mattered.
No.
I've learned from looking at a bit of social media after the game and some of the stuff that's flying around that if you have a passionate interest in the sport, in a team in that final, you will see it differently to anyone who was neutral. So I get the ire of some Warrington fans. Let it go. I get the disappointment of some Hull fans. It's nothing to do with you. I get the absolute euphoria of the Rovers fans and the emotion. But as a neutral, we've seen a lot of finals at Wembley, and they haven't been as gripping or dramatic as that one. And I couldn't take my eyes off it anyway because I was writing about it. But you
couldn't go off and get some food, could you?
I didn't feel you could because I just felt that it was the kind of final, both with the conditions and the defences of both of the teams, where if you love the sport, it contained so much of why we love it. And I don't even buy into this, it was a game for the aficionados because there weren't enough tries scored or clean breaks.
Just you wait.
Defence is a vital part of our sport, and scrambling on your own line defence, of which both sides were sensational, is something that we can admire. The great games in a lot of sports, in the finals, you tend to have two teams that cancel each other out, and the chances are limited, and it's who takes them. Football World Cup finals for the last few editions of it, there've been 1-0s or whatever, because teams are so good. The 2017 World Cup final in Rugby League, an ankle tap, 6-0. That tends to happen in the biggest of games because if both teams are primed in the way that they should be, there's an element of saying you're going to get a couple of chances and that's it. It's not going to be end-to-end stuff. This is what that was. It was enjoyable for what it was, for the drama that it had, for the excitement that it had, for the fact that you didn't know who was going to win, for the dramatic denouement of it. It had everything you want from sport. And it was a narrative for people who don't follow Rugby League but report on other channels that didn't even take coverage of the game to go, what a dramatic end at Wembley in the Challenge Cup. I thought it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I thought it went really quickly, and the people we were around the press box, we all looked at each other at the end and went, wow, that was something.
And it didn't, as some people want to claim, hinge on a controversial, he says in inverted commas for the listeners.
It wasn't a contentious
refereeing decision because I don't know the rules. I looked to you and I said, is it grounded when you touch it with your stomach? Because I didn't know.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to study the rule book because I'm not a referee. I don't even know half the things about rugby league, as you know. So when Sam Burgess asked us in the press conference, what do you think? Well, it doesn't matter what we think. We're not bloody referees. And he should probably know more than we do. But the decision wasn't controversial. It wasn't contentious because it was the right decision.
It followed the rules.
By the rules.
Yeah.
The rules, these things that they've invented. Now, he could say, should players have been sent off or sin bin for high tackles earlier in the game, or should the game flowed? Mm-hmm.
Which again is to the credit of the man in the middle.
Do we? We can say, well, we want it refereed this way, but we actually want it this way, and common sense and blah blah blah. But there was nothing in the game where you come out and think, oh, no, it was a well refereed.
The explanation that was put out afterwards, and admittedly, Sam wouldn't have seen that. Made quite clear that, and again, it's not whether we like the rule or not. Like, it is the rule. So it is apparently different for an attacker as opposed to a defender if you're trying to ground the ball in the in-goal area. And yes, the word intent is open to some degree of subjectivity, but to the letter of the law as written, that was a perfectly legitimate try, and it won the game. Well, the kick afterwards won the game. So Sam comes in straight after, he's really emotional, he's clearly going to be asked about it. I would expect him to say, they may have not got that right. Since that moment, there have been a lot of fans of Warrington on social media berating the game, the officials, the conspiracy theories as to why they lost. Warrington now need to come out and say, we have no problem with the decision. We looked at ourselves. We don't think we could have done a lot more. We exceeded the expectation of a lot of people. We're disappointed that we couldn't do it for the last 2 minutes of the game, but we have no issue with that. And they need to kill that dead.
Wasn't there an incident a few years ago with a fan of that club who sent death threats to a referee? And
you have to,
I know it's an extreme example.
no, you have to be honest. And this is, I go back to Mark Sneed. None of the Warrington players, and particularly him who was interviewed straight after the game because he was the man of the match, none of them, even at the time, weren't rushing round the referee going, that's wrong, what's you get? They accepted that the last minute and a half, they couldn't deny a whole KR team that a minute before that had been in their own half dropping, behind their own post dropping out. Sneed could not have done any more. He got 4 dropouts to 1. 2 of those were right at the end of the game. He kicked a 20-40 with 7 minutes from time.
Have we ever seen a 20-40?
No.
Not many of them.
You couldn't ask for better game management having pinned Hull KR behind their own line with virtually a Hail Mary chance of winning. They won it. There was an unfortunate penalty where Sam Powell did go high on Tom Davies, which gave field position to Hull KR, and they found a play to capitalise on it. And I think the one thing again that when it's in real time and you're reporting on the game, you probably don't see it as much until you see the highlights later. Tyrone May fashioning that kick in those conditions at that point in the game with such accuracy and takes the ball to the line to almost the very last opportunity where you can kick it, which slightly unsettles the Warrington defence, but then puts in a kick that just rolls beyond Lindop but gives Davis and Hiku enough chance to try and get there. Everything Elliot Minchella said about Tom Davies summed up our performance because he had no right to be following up that kick, and if he doesn't follow up that kick, we're not sitting here as winners. That extra effort to keep following in the last minute when you think it's a lost cause, that's why you win. Warrington did not do anything wrong other than just could not compete on the last play that mattered the most. They were brilliant. So, get off social media, Warrington fans, if you're going to berate the decision.
Differing opinions on the how the final went, and that's because it's subjective.
We all have opinions.
It's subjective. Paul
Absolutely.
says it wasn't a great watch. Final 5 minutes agree with the drama, was with a group of people whose first Rugby League game this was. They were quite bored. Andy says, I'm a wire. It was a great match, but I don't know if I'll ever watch it back again. I'd just delete it, Andy. Just delete it now.
Do what Sam's doing and say, that one's consigned to history. Let's move on.
Thomas says, we had so much possession, needed to make it count. I enjoyed the game until the last few minutes. And Paul says, it was a game where both teams got into the grind and kept at it, but in the end, Hull got that little extra to win. Much prefer that kind of game than a 36-26 type game where the tackling is poor. Here's the thing I'm taking away from this. This is my theory now. Wet weather conditions, reminiscent of
Grand finals.
So not only have Hull KR won a big game, because everyone said, I don't want a big game. They've had 2 chances at big games. Now they've won a big game in the kind of conditions we'll see at Old Trafford in October, when it's all the marbles are on the line. So they've got that in their favour as well now. Everyone talks about, well, not everyone. Some people have written articles saying Joe Burgess should be in the England team, which is nonsense. Surely Elliot Minchella, if George Williams was injured, he should be the England captain, because he is a captain. He is a leader, as he has shown throughout his career fighting back from being released by Leeds,
Yeah.
and becoming the captain of Hull Kingston Rovers, captaining them into this final, winning the trophy, speaking well, humble, all these things that you want from a leader.
Appreciative.
He is a leader.
Yeah, and only the second Hull KR skipper in history to lift the Challenge Cup. You know, I think you're right that he talks a lot. Everybody does about doing it for your mates and always doing it, no matter what the state of the game is, and that's what they did. They were as connected, unified, and chasing the game in the last minute as they were in the first. I think that we've seen the disciplinary charges after the game, and
I'd like to see the minutes.
It would appear that two of the incidents that perhaps could have had a card shown have attracted some disciplinary points, not bans. We thought at the time Burgess perhaps could have got a yellow and couldn't have complained if he had. Right. The Sasso Sue one, where there's a spitting allegation, I don't even think you can comment on until he goes before the beak tomorrow.
And people have put it up on social media, the video, and we don't know until. And the thing
you don't
with that
know
again
what
is,
angle it is and all that kind of stuff.
Whatever the decision is reached, people will moan about it either way. So there's
So I think there is a tendency in finals to be a little bit more lenient, but you also tend to find in the big games that both teams want to play.
Yeah.
They're not trying to slow it down. I think the wet weather suited Warrington because it played into the hands of Sneed, whose kicking was fantastic. And it wasn't just his kicking, I think his distribution was great. Williams came back, was a risk, wasn't a risk. He was brilliant. Ben Curry was outstanding, I thought. And he made a late break, and I genuinely thought that's going to be the break that wins the game for them, but
not again.
But it wasn't. And he's got some memories of Wembley where he must think, what have I got to do to to be on the right side of the law. But I think Hull KR's stickability, if that's a word that you can use, the amount of times, particularly late on in the game, where they were defending their own line, but with such commitment, the reward came. And I think it's too early to say this is a dynasty and they're going to go because they've won one, they'll win.
They've won one thing, yeah. That's all they've done so far.
They're going to have to manage, as indeed a Warrington, what normally happens after you've played at such a high and intense level, and either in terms of disappointment or relation, you have to manage that over the next 2 or 3 weeks because it just drains you emotionally, and your battery is low. Even if you're physically fit, you just can't keep getting up for stuff. They're going to need to rotate their squad a little bit. Michael McAlorum, the other injury doubt before the game, was it a risk? Was it ducks and drakes that he didn't appear at the captain's run? Probably. Did they get a decent 23 minutes out of him? Probably. Did he do anything that changed the course of the game? Probably not. But Willie Peters said, when you look around the dressing room and he's there, you're going to be all right. Did it make sure that Jez Litton had to put even more into the 55 minutes that he was on? Possibly. So no, it paid off for Hull KR. They got what they deserved because they played to the very end, and Warrington can hold their heads up high because we haven't seen a performance like that from them this year.
And of course, as we go towards the second bit of the season and we build up to Old Trafford, and no one has written off Wigan despite some nonsense, and they'll be hungry to get back there.
Well, more than that, they've had another week off, and they'll be relishing to get to top spot as quickly as they can.
But it's okay because Andy says the grand final is in October, but Wire will knock them out in September. So there you go, Warrington. Need to find some consistency because I know it's difficult to get up every week, but the Warrington we saw on Saturday was not the Warrington we've seen consistently in Super League this season, where they've been dreadful.
But I think the reason for that, with the greatest respect to Andy and what they may or may not do in September, is I think they knew that 80 minutes was their season, that they can't guarantee they're going to be in the six, and if they get there high enough up the six to create enough damage in the playoffs, I think what they knew was there was a chance to win that cup mid-season and then see what happens after it, particularly with Sam's future in the balance.
And that's what I'd say. Toby says it was a bit off the mark in John Davidson's pre-match to say that Hull KR were the only team that could beat Hull KR. But on all the evidence we had going into the game, Warrington, who we've seen lose heavily to Wakefield twice, Wigan, would not have been on the same level as Hull KR. And they were, and that's to their credit.
The bookies rarely get it wrong, and Hull KR were, 3-1 on?
Yeah.
And had 12 points. Warrington had 12 points on the handicap, which went out from 8 in that week. The bookies rarely get it wrong. It was safe to say that Hull KR were strong favourites. And that isn't disrespectful to Warrington. That's what the form guide said.
Toby says, you, Phil, said that was Warrington's last meaningful game of the season. Do you still think that's the case? And I would say, yeah, they're not going to get to Old Trafford.
I think they need to resolve what's happening with Sam. I still think it's odd that he would admit to having an interview with another club while still contracted to Warrington in the week before a big game. The indications are Sam won't be there next year. That now makes it a really big call for how Warrington finish the season in terms of the players they've got, what retention and recruitment they can do before they know who their coach is going to be, and how motivated they are. I don't know. I look at the league table and think the top two probably nailed on. Leeds with no distractions, you'd say, would be a team in the playoffs. Lee, not sure about at the moment. Think we need to see a bit more evidence of that. Saints and Catalan, there'll be some sock pulling up needed to be done. So Warrington can make the playoffs. But it's going to be a real hard slog from here because they are a little bit behind the 8 ball. I think Saturday was their best chance of winning silverware. If
you ask me, do I think Warrington will get to Old Trafford? No. Could they get there? Yeah, of course they could.
Yeah.
Because the only teams I don't think that can get there, Castleford, Huddersfield, Salford,
that's where we are.
Probably Catalans. At the minute. And do I think Wakefield are going to get there? No.
We haven't said Wakefield, and I think they're again pushing for a top 6 place. On the way I've seen them play in the first half of the season, if they can keep their main players on the field, then you'd have to put them in the mix. And once you start putting Wakefield in the mix, then are Warrington better or worse than Wakefield? So it's going to be a hell of a job for the Wolves to win at Old Trafford or even get there.
And before I forget, because you've mentioned Wakefield and Darryl Powell was at Warrington, Oliver Holmes has retired.
He has.
Best of luck, Ollie, in your future endeavours. Go back to podcasting.
Yeah.
There is never a more dangerous time in my career than the one time I sat in on the 6 to 8 debate with him and Joy Hitchcox, and that was an absolute nightmare.
Was your finger hovering over
that big button that said dump? And that's not even the... I wasn't even on the time where...
Don't.
I can't. That's the thing.
You can't.
I can't. I can't even go beyond that sentence. But the very best of luck in your future endeavours, Oliver. I would love to have seen you in a Wakefield shirt. That's the highest praise I can give of any player. But you play for Cass, so you're one of them. I just wanted to mention that before I forgot. Kevin says, evening lads, bad day, but Wire should have put them away. Come back to haunt us. Don't agree with giving 6 more on the 5th tackle for a challenge that was happening all games. Congratulations to KR. I can't remember what happened, but I'd take your word for it, Kevin. We have to win our next 3. Well, Leeds, there you go on Saturday. What's it on the telly, but they're all on the telly.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because this period after you've played in an event like that and had your heart broken, it's really hard to get up to the level of intensity, particularly to play a team that's had a week off. So it's going to be a big ask on Saturday.
No, Dufty, but they've got Rashford to fill in, which I know he's not the same style of play, but at least he's got experience in that position.
No.
Dominic asks if Burdish does leave, who's taking over. Kevin says Sam has said he's going to see out his contract, though. He literally said it again last week. Was his contract till the end of this season?
End of 26, because he signed a contract extension.
As to who would take over, no idea. But
well, Steve McNamara is going to be the first cab off the rank for... And again, because he's available now...
Yeah.
If you think you're going to need to make a change...
Well, we say he's available now. Bernard Gouache says he's gone, but he hasn't gone yet.
Well...
Officially.
I think he has. Bernard has
told
Orlando Pendon that he felt that they needed a clean sheet of paper.
He has, but
and younger recruits from the NRL, which is interesting.
Need a coach as well.
There is a rumour in the new issue of 4020 as to who the next Catalan coach will be.
Andy says, Warrington still have to play Salford twice, Catalan twice, Huddersfield once and Cas once. Well, we'll make the top 5.
The slight problem with that, and I get that, is that you're judging those teams on their form at the moment, but Huddersfield will jag a win from somebody. Castleford are inconsistent, but you wouldn't put it past them, and Catalan can't get any worse.
No.
So I wouldn't look at your fixtures.
But we're also not writing off Warrington making the top 6
absolutely
either.
not. It's
because
just going to be tough.
there are...
I don't think they're capable of winning a grand final.
12 teams in Super League. I've written off 3 of them, probably 4. So 8 going into 6. They've got a very good chance.
And I still think that if we're sitting here in October and they have won the grand final, we would be nothing but admiring of what they've
And
done.
then we've got nothing, because the whole things have gone, and the only thing we've now got left is Warrington, it being their year. So if they win it, I mean, granted, there's still the potential of nuclear war and everything, but still, I don't know. I don't know what we'll do after. We might just have to end everything. That might be the end of Rugby League. That's the season finale. Warrington win it, and that's it. What's something else about Warrington and Hulkinson Rose we needed to say? Probably not. I think
I enjoyed it. I'll make no bones about the fact that I am not a Warrington fan, so I feel your pain. I'm a neutral, but I loved it.